This is the Free Zone Communique, transmitting from Virginia's unoccupied sector. If you think smart cities, DEI, censorship, government intrusion, bug paste, and other left-wing nonsense are no longer a possibility, think again. We've won one election with slim majorities. Our work to rebuild a free and sane America has just begun.
Then Sandy Berger gets caught stealing documents out of the archives. Remember?
Yep. And his
stuff them in his underwear and socks.
Yep.
Those documents were all pre-9/11 intelligence documents. He didn't want them to go to the 9/11 Commission where they'd have to respond to them. So he stole them. He lied about it. Finally, the Justice Department called him in, and he hired one of Clinton's lawyers, and they cut a plea bargain. The same lawyer that sent the agents to my daughter's house is the guy that cut the plea bargain for Sandy Berger.
Yeah.
The same lawyer. And that lawyer cut the plea bargain. He pled guilty to 11 felonies, stealing 5 documents, destroying 5 documents, and lying to a federal agent. You know what his penalty was? 1 misdemeanor. No jail time.
Unbelievable.
1 misdemeanor. These are classified documents since he destroyed them. When Sandy Berger leaves the government after Clinton leaves, he sets up a company. The name of that company was Stonebridge. He brings in Madeleine Albright, who becomes a partner in Stonebridge. It's called Stonebridge Albright. Berger dies. The company today is called, and guess what Stonebridge does? They represent all Chinese corporations.
Unbelievable.
You get it?
Well, it's like you said, you follow the money, you follow the trail through the sewer, and you can find anything you need to find.
I did a 1-hour special order about Sandy Berger, and I called him a traitor on the House floor.
And you called him
a traitor.
Traitor, yeah.
Traitor. Okay. And the year that they took me out, Berger was the most active person against me that year. Yeah. And assigned one of his staffers to actually work on the campaign again. I still would have won the election. But the only reason I lost was because of the raid on my daughter's house.
Yeah, the hubris on the part of Sandy Berger is immeasurable.
He was protected. He was protected.
He's so highly protected. But he had this what it's like denying reality. He was still arrogant. Most people, when caught red-handed, are like, okay, they skulk off. He was still arrogant. It's like, where do you get that? Where do you get this hubris?
It was the Clintons. The Clintons were the same way.
Unbelievable. Yes, they are. That is exactly correct.
She can destroy 30,000 records, which had been subpoenaed, and she gets away with it. Nobody does anything.
Smashes her electronics, and that's not even alleged. The people who did it admitted they did it. They smashed their phones and iPads. They split their server. They said they did, and they all got immunity.
Yep.
That's not how you use immunity. You use immunity with 1 or 2 key people to bring in the net of who you're trying to deal with.
So what the people have to understand is that this all is only going to be changed if the people stay involved and stop letting, unfortunately, the mainstream media that's all polluted spin stories that are hand-fed to them stupidly by agency people who have a different agenda. And that's why I would not come out and speak up until now. Up until now, I knew what was there. And even though Biden was a friend of mine, when my son died, Biden drove 3 hours to attend the service of my son. He was vice president because they all went to the same, his kids went to the same high school. His daughter was my son's classmate, Ashley.
Yeah.
And I had nothing against Biden personally. It's just in the end, he wasn't qualified to be president. He wasn't fit mentally to be president.
Yeah, he was now firing on all cylinders.
They used him. They used him big time.
Yeah.
And I feel bad about that because I worked with him. I took Biden to Libya with me on my second trip. When I spoke to the entire country, Biden was with me on the trip. Very rarely do senators travel with House members. He traveled with me. He went to Iraq with me. I have photographs of him and I together. You know, the thing is, they've tried to keep me from talking. And up until now, I didn't feel comfortable talking because I knew at the top, and I told this to the people around Trump when he was elected the first time. I said, Trump doesn't understand what he doesn't understand. And what they'll do, he made a wise decision when he hired General Flynn. General Mike Flynn was going to be his intel guy.
Right.
And Flynn knows the intelligence community. So what did they do? Before Trump was sworn in, they got Flynn out of the way.
Correct.
Flynn was never made. Once they got Flynn out of the way, Trump was like a baby in the woods. He knew nothing about intelligence. He had no loyalty to who he was. And so they spent 4 years basically disrupting his presidency. And Flynn, I know Flynn well, Flynn paid the price for that.
You too can be a pooper. In 2018, I was an author with a WordPress blog. My mission was to create better politicians by informing and inspiring the best of our voters. I succeeded one voter at a time, but there are 200 million of you out there. I started the P4B and ultimately the Jordan Corey Show to widen our reach. Now we hope to rekindle your sacred, your important archival knowledge, and channel it toward building a healthier, more productive republic. You can add your voice in the comment sections. Our words will echo, but how loudly and for how long depends on you. The more you support us, the louder the echo. The more you share, the more ears the echo will reach. We are working to improve our delivery and expand our reach. Subscriptions are still 100% free. Help us grow numerically and technically and remain a free site. Donate directly or support our affiliate sponsors. There are buttons below the media line for this episode. Share every day and subscribe on Substack and Rumble. Become a political party pooper.
In a future show, I want to cut out 3 items for a discussion we can have. One was the 96 timeline where you're talking about Trump and the money trail, or not Trump, Hillary. I want to talk about that Flynn case because that's interesting where Comey's concerned, and Comey now finds himself under investigation, which is sweet. I love it. And I want to we'll talk about 9/11 just a little bit before we cut away here, but we'll get into Building 7 the next time. Because I remember I was seeing something. You're involved with discussions about Building 7.
Well, about 9/11 in general.
Pardon me?
Because the 9/11 Commission was not honest. I know about the intelligence side of 9/11, but when I heard the audio tape of one of the most respected firefighters in New York, Oriel Palmer, who was a battalion chief, this is very important. There's an audio tape of him from the New York City Internal Communications. He had taken his crew on an elevator in one tower up to the 40th floor, 41st floor. They got off the 41st floor and they walked 37 floors up in the stair tower. They got to the 78th floor. They got out of the stair tower and they go on the floor of impact where the plane hit. And you hear Oriel Palmer say, as clear as you and I talking, I'm here on the floor of impact. We've got 2 fires and we can handle them.
This isn't something I do want to break down. But if we did that today, we'd be here for 4 hours.
No, but
we will do this.
Well, I want the president to have a special commission. That's my goal. I want a new presidential commission on 9/11.
Right.
That's my goal. I'm not an expert on buildings. I don't know anything about
I can see what people say about the tall buildings. but I found some really interesting information on Building 7.
It was even Donald Trump said publicly it was controlled demolition. He said that publicly.
Well, I would take the opposite view, but that's based on some serious engineering. And again, I'll be able to talk in detail on a full show and have illustrations.
No planes hit it. No planes hit Building 7.
But what I do want to finish with, you were in D.C. the other day.
I go to D.C. usually once a week.
Yeah. And you're talking about your 290 initiatives. Who are you talking about, and what is that program?
Okay, back 2 years ago, I contacted Biden's chief legal counsel, Steve Ricchetti, who I've known since he was chief of staff for Biden in the Senate. So I said, I have a plan for America's firefighters, and I want to offer it to Joe first because he was my co-chair of the Fire Caucus. So I went over to the White House. I took two people with me, Judge Sullivan and the managing partner, Squire Patton Boggs, Michael Curto. For an hour and a half, I briefed them on what I'm going to give to you. And I said, I'm willing to let Joe be the lead, maybe have a White House conference, the first ever, on firefighters. And I couldn't get to Joe because he wasn't there, and Joe's mental health wasn't all that great. They never responded. So in August, I've never met Trump. I reached out to the Trump people and I said, I'd like to offer this to Trump in case he wins. So I reached out to Trump, and I started talking to Susie Wiles, who at the time was his campaign manager. And I briefed her on my initiative for firefighters because they need help right now. They got problems, they need help. And in every town. And so she listened to me. I tried to put an event together in October, non-political, where he would address firefighters and say, I support what you're doing in the communities. I wouldn't let him wear any campaign stuff, but I couldn't get it worked out. So after he won, I went back to them and I put together what I call Fire EMS 290. And why is it called Fire EMS 290? As you've heard Trump say, next year is the 250th anniversary of America. It's a big deal, right?
Yeah.
Next year is the 290th anniversary of the birth of the first fire company in America.
That's
The first fire company was in 1736 in Philadelphia, started by Ben Franklin, and it was called Union Hose. It didn't take a government to form a fire company.
Right.
The people of America came together in their communities and organized to protect each other. Today, there are 30,000 fire departments, 50,000 stations. Next year, they'll be 40 years older than the nation. There's no other group like that.
Right.
So Fire EMS 290 is about honoring them. They have major needs.
There's such a great lesson there. You don't need big mommy state to fix things.
Never.
Communities fix things.
That's exactly right.
Mommy state should be taking care of foreign trade.
Exactly right.
And everything else will do it.
You've got to help these local community-based groups, and that's what my initiatives are about. So I came up with an idea of 7 task forces. The first one deals with firefighter health, safety, and welfare. And the Firefighters Union, Ed Kelly's the head of it, they do a good job. But I said, Ed, you're looking to get more research for cancer and burns and hepatitis out of the NIH. I said, they don't have a budget. You can't get any more out of them. I said, you know who the biggest funder of healthcare research is in America? He said, who? I said, it's the Defense Department. Because the Pentagon has a $1 trillion budget. We have whole bases to do nothing but healthcare research.
Yeah.
Fort Detrick down here in Maryland, the whole base is healthcare research. We have a brain injury unit down in Texas. But they don't just do veterans and GIs, they do families and the kids of the veterans. I said, you need to have the president allow those institutions to tell you the research they're doing that might have application for firefighters. So the first task force is on firefighter health, safety, and welfare. The second task force is to create a new generation of firefighters. So you know who I went to? I went to the Rendell Center in Philadelphia. Now, the Rendell Center was started by Judge Marjorie Rendell, federal judge, and Ed Rendell, the former mayor of Philadelphia.
Yeah, is he still around?
Yeah, he's not well, but he's still around. Still doing good. So they started a civics program called the Rendell Center for Civic Engagement. to get young kids to understand the need to get involved. So I asked them, can you put together a program to get young kids involved in fire and EMS? They did. So we have a program from kindergarten to 12th grade that we can provide to any school in the country for free, that a fire company can use to get their school involved and getting the kids interested, not about fire prevention, that's separate, but about how can I become a member of the fire company like my father taught me. So we get the kids involved and excited. So we create a new generation of American firefighters. That's the second task force. The third task force, how do we get, because the biggest problem of volunteer fire companies today in Maryland and Pennsylvania, all over the country, is they can't get new recruits because the kids are tied up in cell phones and all these other things. So how do you do that? Well, I know what we do for our veterans. If you're a veteran, you can go down to Admiral Lynch at New Day, and they'll help you get a no down payment mortgage. You've seen the ads.
Yes.
Admiral Lynch is a friend of mine.
Mhm.
He was the head of Annapolis. So I went down and met with him twice last year. I said, Tom, I want to do the same thing for firefighters. I want to develop a series of financial incentives, not government programs, financial incentives, discounts at department stores, discounts on health insurance, life insurance, property insurance, discounts on cell phone service. So if you belong to a fire company and you're a volunteer or paid, you can get a 10% discount or a 15% discount on bills that you have to pay, where the private companies recognize your service to your community. So that's the third task force. And Trump needs to help me get to those CEOs to do that. The fourth task force is going to be run through the California fire chiefs. I was their keynote speaker last year at their conference, and that's called wildfires and natural disasters. So the California fire chiefs and the Western fire chiefs will take the lead, and they will come up with a plan to help us understand how we can better assist in preventing and dealing with wildfires and natural disasters. And that has to be done by firefighters, not by bureaucrats and their agencies.
Right.
The fifth task force is how we're going to change the paradigm. I've been to all 50 states. I've been to every major disaster a day or two after it happens, and it's always the same. We respond, we mitigate, and recover. We're missing the two most important things: prediction and prevention. And I'm going to give you a couple of examples. When I was on the Armed Services Committee as vice chairman, I was the chairman for 6 years of military research funding, which at that time was about $150 billion a year. All of our R&D programs for the military, through DARPA and all of our labs. We have 100 labs, DOE labs, DOD labs, university labs. We had a fire up in Boston, Massachusetts, actually it was in Worcester. 2 firefighters went into a burning warehouse. Their air supply ran out. The chief didn't know where they were. He sent 4 more firefighters in. All 6 died. At the time that fire happened, we had a similar fire in Philadelphia in the building across the street from the City Hall, the Meridian Tower building. 3 firefighters died because the chief thought they were 2 floors from where they were. When those fires occurred, as the chairman of the oversight committee in the military for intelligence, I was aware that our military had already perfected vertical and horizontal GPS and the transmission capability of vital signs. Now, here we are 25 years later, and we still don't have a device that a firefighter can wear that tells the chief where they are and how well they're doing.
And that's
And it's
that's not a mysterious technology anymore.
No, but it's not there.
Right.
No one has brought those capabilities together so that there's one device that a firefighter or an EMS person can wear that gives the chief the information to prevent these deaths.
Yeah.
So the idea of the technology directorate is to take technology of it. We have a technology for satellites. We're using satellites now for forest fires, and I helped get that started when I was there. We have a software algorithm now that can give you the moisture content of a forest from space before there's a fire.
Yeah.
We can tell you the moisture content. So the county or state can plan to keep people away from starting a fire. That's already, but it's not being used.
I want to hit on that. I want to hit on that.
So the point is,
And don't get me wrong. I love the idea, the initiative on prediction and prevention.
technology can predict and prevent disaster.
And,
So
and
that's
I love
a separate
that
task.
somebody is formalizing it.
There's 2 more.
But the knowledge has been there.
That, in many cases, it was developed by our military.
if you drive through the big pine barrens of Mississippi, all right, as you're driving down the highway twice a year, it looks like somebody took a rake and a bush hog to the entire forest. The trees are all there, but it's absolutely slicked twice a year.
Clear the brush away.
So yeah, they actually start fires. There's a breed of pine tree down on the coast that actually benefits a little bit from a controlled burn. And every couple of years they burn off the shrub.
But the radical environmentalists and radical environmentalists have stopped that in many of our forests.
California, yeah, that's where I was going
And
with.
that's why you have these fires.
Right.
So
I mean,
the decisions the planning have to be done by firefighters, not by career bureaucrats sitting in office, sipping their
playing
champagne.
politics. Right. So
that's a fifth.
Want to be my point is, instead of listening to the experts, we hear it. Everybody knows it. They bow to somebody who's worried about the gay nuclear spotted owl, as opposed to worried about this entire city that's up in the hills that shouldn't have been built there because it's desert and all the water they use is brought in from some other state. But here it is. It's here. Now we're here. What do we do to prevent destroying everything here? And the answers are childishly simple, but we worry about what this dude in a man bun is going to think of us if we
and the idiotic mayor of LA fires the fire chief as a scapegoat because the mayor did not do her job. I called for her to be fired the day after the fire happened. So this past week, she fires the fire chief, who actually publicly said she had denied the resources for them. That's got to stop. Then there are two more task forces. The sixth task force is to build a recognition center in Washington. When you go to DC, our nation's capital, there are dozens of memorials for our military veterans, and I support them. You can go to the Pentagon and you can honor our troops. You can go to Fort Belvoir. You can, there's all kinds of memorials. Law enforcement, we have a memorial in Washington. We have the FBI building. There's not one thing in Washington honoring the firefighter or the EMS person in America. Not one. Yet each year, we lose 120 police officers in the line of duty. We lose 120 firefighters in the line of duty. There are no volunteer police. I'm not anti-police.
Yeah.
But the bulk of those firefighters are volunteers.
Right.
So 8 years ago, I started planning, and it's now ready to go. We're building a 13-story building on New Jersey Avenue over top of Engine 3, which is the fire station that protects the Capitol. And that 13-story building is going to be the Legacy Fire and EMS Tower. On the first 4 floors, it will be the National Fire and EMS Museum. There'll be a studio in there connected to a 4-channel network called Fire Rescue TV, run by Martin Grube, a former firefighter. And that'll be offered to all 50,000 fire stations in America for free. So you will have a 4-channel communication system in every firehouse in the country for free. One channel will be a training channel. One channel will be a technology channel. One channel will be an updated news channel about disasters. And the 4th channel, the local chief can use for whatever purpose they want. The studio for that will be in DC. So if somebody wants to talk to firefighters, they go to that building and they can address either one state or the entire country's firefighters.
Get out of town.
The upper floors will be offices for fire and EMS. And we're working now, the hotel next door, the Yotel, wants to combine, so it'll be a whole block. That's the 6th task force. The 7th, I got a wealthy donor to donate 120,000 acres of land in San Diego and Imperial County, California. He bought it in 2018 as a speculator. He's going to build a solar farm. But he heard about what I'm doing, so he's donating the land. It's going to become the first and only international fire EMS disaster training and simulation center. It'll be designed by the California Fire Chiefs through their foundation with national fire chiefs. And it will be not only training, which there is no national training center right now. The states have them. Maryland has one, Delaware has one, but not of this quality. We're going to have a national training center, and it'll also be a simulation center. So there'll be simulations of building collapses, simulations of wildfires, simulations of tidal waves. So they'll be able to simulate any disaster at that location, open to the U.S. firefighters, but as available foreign firefighters coming from other countries to learn how to deal with disasters. It'll all be tied in technology-wise to every fire department in the world. And there are 25 million firefighters worldwide. They've never been assembled together. That will be the center of international fire, EMS, and disaster training, developed and managed by American firefighters. Those are the 7 task forces.
Jesus.
That's Fire EMS 290.
Wow. Curt, this has been an amazing conversation.
Thanks for having me.
I want to get deep into those other subjects I mentioned earlier. I want to get into Maui and LA and the monumental screw ups involved in both of those, which you have to lay at the feet of
Government.
Politicians and I'm sorry, everybody's going to freak out. DEI. We need qualified people. We need well-trained people. We need people who are aware of the problem. We don't need political hacks.
Let me give you a story. Let's do it. They'll make your case. You ready for it?
Yep.
My first term in Congress, I'm the youngest member in my class. I think I was in my 30s. So I'm all honored. I'm going to go to Washington. My kids are there, my wife, and it's a great day. So I'm assigned to the Longworth building, which is across the street from the Capitol.
Yeah.
And they assign you an office. I'm on the second floor. And it just so happens I'm 2 doors from the suite where the speaker at the time had his whole suite of offices. His main office is in the Capitol, but he has a suite of offices in the Longworth building.
Is that Tip?
No, it was Jim Wright.
Jim Wright. Okay.
Texas. So I'm in my office working late at night. It's about 7 o'clock. I had one staffer staying with me that night working late. Today he runs the Pennsylvania Convention Center, John McNichol. He's from Delaware County.
Yeah.
So we're sitting in the office doing work because I had a group coming down the next day. And I said, John, I smell smoke. He said, Curt, you're dreaming. There's no smoke. I said, John, I smell smoke. So it's getting stronger. So I go out and look in the hallway and there's smoke coming down from the speaker suite. So I said, John, there's a fire in the speaker's office. Call the alarm in, close the windows. I'm going to go down, make sure there's no staff in the building. So I'm in the room. So I leave my office, run down the hallway. There's smoke coming out of the speaker's office. I feel the door, make sure there's no heat right there. Kick the door open, got down on my hands and knees, and I crawl in to make sure there's no staff collapsed or we're in the multiple rooms. I could see the kitchen area was fully involved in fire from where I was crawling through. I hollered at John, get me the portable fire extinguishers. He comes back with 5. 3 of them weren't charged. Now, this is the Capitol. This is the House office building. So 3 of them weren't charged. I said, John, go back to the hose station and bring me the 1.5 inch pre-connected hose. And when I yell to you, turn the nozzle that turns the water on so I can control this fire while the DC Fire Department arrives. So he comes back and he yells at Curt, there's no hose in the hose station. So I said, well, there's not much I can do to control the fire. So I come out of the suite, and by this time, the smoke is billowing down from the ceiling in all the hallways. People are coming down the stairwells crying. The elevators are stopping on the fire floor. The Capitol Hill police are running through the building yelling, fire, get out. So I stopped one of them, and he recognized I was a congressman. I said, what about sprinklers? He said, Congressman, there's no sprinklers in the building. I said, okay, what about alarm? He said, there's no alarm. I said, well, pull the manual alarm. And he says to me, there's no alarm system in the building. Now,
how old is this building?
Understand, every building code and every fire code in every city in America that has multiple occupancies has a requirement, regardless of age, that you have to have basic fire protection and life safety.
Unless?
No, there's no unless.
No, I mean, here you have a government building that doesn't have it.
And then my point is, you have the leaders of America, 535 members of Congress, meeting in 7-story buildings with blind people and handicapped people, old people, in violation of every code in the country. How can you expect them to do what's logical if they don't understand why fire codes are there?
Right.
It's not for the glory of a fire code. It's in case you have a fire and you got to bring down a blind person in the steps in the middle of smoke. Logic doesn't work. Logic didn't work in Maui. Logic didn't work in the wildland fires. You can't get politicians to respond to logic. And that's what I told the fire service. You got to make it real. That's why I brought the fire trucks around the Capitol. You got to make it real.
Yeah.
And that's why I formed the fire caucus. So
you got to punch them in the face with it.
you're exactly right. You got to shake them by the neck. I used to take members of Congress out and make them ride along at night with the DC Fire Department. They would get up on the trucks. They would go to the alarm to see what the firefighters do. Because it's not always a fire. It could be a drug dealing. It could be a person committing suicide. Those firefighters are trained as EMTs. They have to respond to that. And I tell every fire company in the country, get your elected officials out to see what you do.
Jesus Christ.
I mean, show them what you're doing. Because logic doesn't do it. Logic, they're not going to do things that they don't know about. And if you don't make it real for them, then they're not going to understand what to do.
Logic doesn't do it. I'm going to dedicate an entire show to that statement. And I'll
So that night,
hold the show in your honor.
that night, I'm in my little place where I slayed. I forget where it was, some flea bag hotel, and I get a call on my cell phone, and it's the Speaker's chief of staff. Now I'm a Republican in the Democrat Congress, and his name was Marshall something. He said, Marshall. I said, oh, nice to meet you. He said, I just calling on behalf of the Speaker. He wanted me to call you and thank you for what you did in his office. I said, no, it's no problem. I said, the fire was there. I was there. I said, but those buildings, they're not safe. He says, well, we know that. He said, but you're going to get overwhelmed with the media tomorrow. Because I had called the buildings fire traps that night on the media. Yeah. He said, tomorrow they're all going to be. I said, well, he said, you're not going to blame the Speaker, are you? I said, no, I'm not going to blame the Speaker. It's not his fault, but you got to change this. These buildings wouldn't qualify in any city in America under code. He said, whatever you want. So I had my staff that night prepare what's called a privilege resolution, which takes precedence over all other legislation. So the next morning, and I'm a freshman member, I go down to the House floor. Speaker Jim Wright opens a session, and it's his discretion. And he says, I recognize, the chair recognized the gentleman from Pennsylvania. And I stand up, and he said, first of all, I want to thank the gentleman for what he did yesterday. So he said, I know why the gentleman's standing, and I accept his resolution. We're appointing a special 4-person task force. The gentleman will be one of the 4 members, and the task force will make recommendations about retrofitting all the buildings in Washington. That task force, which I was on, mandated that every building, the Capitol and all 6 office buildings were retrofitted.
Right.
With sprinklers, detectors, full stations, automatic recall. So you can get results.
We're talking about the entire federal reservation now is...
All the Congress, the Capitol Hill, the 6 office buildings, the Capitol itself were all retrofitted. In fact, they gave me the call box from the Capitol, which is in my home, as a symbol for the work I did. The point is that, and I told the fire, you got to make it real. It's like you said, oh, I know about this technology. That doesn't make it happen. The military has technology. They don't want to transfer it to civilians. That's not their job. You got to make it happen.
Right.
You got to make that occur. And that's but that's the story about why in Maui and these other disasters, logic didn't work, because the members of Congress don't have a clue. All right.
I'll tell you that we have so much more to talk about. Will you come back at a later date?
I'll come back.
Outstanding. I feel pretty confident that this will be our most viewed podcast.
Good.
And probably it'll be the one over time that people hit organically, because there's so much that's searchable in the content. And for that reason, I really appreciate your coming by.
No problem.
You and my last couple of guests, you have been the guys that I've been trying to get since I started this over a year ago.
Well, good for you. Keep up the good work.
Yeah, and I will.
People like you. We need people like you doing this to get the American people to hear what the truth is. It's not about political parties. It's about getting involved.
This is the new media, my friend. We are taking down the MSM left and right.
This is what it's all about.
Yeah. And I appreciate you being here, and we'll have you back. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Have a good day.
Please tell a friend about the Free Zone Communique. We live and die with the share and subscribe buttons. Please use affiliate and sponsor buttons to support our work. Thank you very much for joining us today.